Welcome to the fabulous new month of February. Join us online tonight as we kick off 2021's first Spicy Night. SPICEE is saving people in communities through entertainment and empowerment. Our theme tonight is reconnect to our beautiful heritage. Tonight, we celebrate the Black History Month experience with riveting interviews, discussions, music, and spoken word highlighting African American heritage, faith, genealogy, the Black Panther movement, and the faith revival in Chicago.
I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. But sometimes I wonder what He can do. No great success to show, no glory of my own. Yet in my weakness, He is there to let me know His strength is perfect when our strength is gone. He'll carry us when we can't carry on. Praise His power, the weak becomes strong. His strength is perfect. His strength is perfect. And only know the power that He holds, and we truly see how deep our needs are. His strength in us begins when ours comes to an end. He hears a humble cry and proves again His strength is perfect when all strength is gone. He'll carry us when we can't carry on. Praise His power, we become strong. His strength is perfect. His strength is perfect when all strength is gone. He'll carry us when
Hello, 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 hello. I hope everyone can hear me very clearly. This is Pastor Lan coming to you live from the city of Chicago. And I'm excited to bring to you today the first spicy night of 2021. Wow, excited. I'm so excited to see all of you that are already joining us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Welcome to Spicy Night. This is going to be a very, very powerful one. We are dedicating this to Black history. As you know, in the United States, February is Black History Month. So we just want to spend some time this first spicy night to just reflect on our heritage. The great thing about us, those who are believers in Christ, is that we have our natural heritage, and then we also have our supernatural heritage, our Christian heritage, and we celebrate both. We celebrate both. And today we're going to be just mingling everything together and just celebrating how we got here as a people, and also how we got here, spiritually, from the Christian perspective. So I'm really excited today. I'm trying to do if you see my background, I'm trying to do the Pan-African color. So I have the green, I have the red, and I have the black somewhere in there. That was a suggestion to me by one of our guests that is going to be coming on today. And I'm glad that, I am informed. So really, really excited. Guys, we have some powerful things lined up for you today. We have some great, people that are going to be coming in and, going to be sharing with us today. A lot of wonderful stuff. So I want to ask you to get, just get ready. Get excited. I want you to participate. I see people already commenting. Those of you that are watching, I see a lot of people already watching. If you can just tell me where you are watching from, just type it in your comments, wherever you are watching from, whether from Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, just type it right there in the comments, and we will be able to see it in this place, So I want to know where you are watching from. Thank you, Justin Rogers. Don't worry. My pictures, my video is going to go very soon. So it's all right. All right. So to move on, our first guest for today that we're going to be having a discussion with is somebody that I've gotten to know, for a couple of years, and now I got to know her through her sister. And, the time I got to know her was, when I was, during the time when I was doing my PhD. She was also doing her PhD around that time. And we were both, cracking our heads on our dissertation and all that. But right now, she has completed her PhD for some years. She's, and she's using it to make an impact in the world and, teaching people, doing research. And I'm so excited to have her, on today. She is, she'll tell us a bit more about herself because she's actually going to be delving into our, family heritage as we go into this discussion on our body heritage. So without wasting any more time, I would like to welcome to Spicy Night, February 2021, Spicy Night, Celebrating Heritage, Dr. Laverne Gray.
Hello.
Hello, Dr.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Yeah. Can you guys hear her? Those of you watching, let us know if you can hear both of us clearly.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. So welcome. First of all, well, congratulations again. I know it's been a while on your PhD.
It's been almost 2 years.
It's been almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with that. So how do you feel, when you finish your PhD? I know the way I felt, I felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulder.
Yes, and the word that came to mind is lighter. So I felt so much lighter because it feels like a burden, but it's a a desired burden. It's something you carry around with you, meaning getting through the work in a way. So because you're following your passion and you're following your pathway, and it's an honor, privilege, and blessing to be able to participate uh, um, in broadening one's mind, right? And that is and was the primary purpose for me, to be a better person. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So what tell us now, what are you doing with it now? With the
Okay.
PhD?
Okay, so soon after, well, actually, it's been exactly 2 years. I defended my dissertation in December of 2019, and then December of 2018. I'm sorry, and then whatever with the time and the pandemic, we forget what days and months and years we are in. But and I began a position at Syracuse University. I'm at the Information School, or the School of Information Studies, and I'm an assistant professor. And I teach mainly courses on library and information sciences. That was my profession. I was a librarian, and I'll be teaching undergraduates this year, starting next week.
Awesome.
So yeah, and doing research and writing papers and grant applications and all of those good things too.
Oh, wow. Awesome. That sounds like fun. All right. So this is Black History Month, and this is Spicy Night. Our focus today is on our heritage, celebrating our beautiful heritage. So, like I said, we have a heritage of our faith. We also have, our natural heritage, and we ought to celebrate both. So, and that's what we are doing this month and what we are focused on today. So, you have an interesting story to share with us about your family. So I'm going to let you just take it from here. I'm going to go off the video, and I'm going to let you just interact with the audience, and then I'll come back, and then we'll have some discussions after then. So Dr. Gray, please take it away and just share with us, just some interesting things about your family.
Okay, thank you. But before you go, I just want to make sure the screen can be shared.
Oh yeah, I will share your screen.
Okay, thank you.
Your screen is on right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Awesome. And if you want me to stay, I'll stay too. So you can go ahead now.
Oh, thank you for staying here with me. I enjoy the company. But
yes,
I'm only going to take up a few minutes this evening to talk about the faith of our mothers, a maternal family tree. And I did a version of this for my small group, Bible study group back on Mother's Day. And I'm here to share it with everyone. And it tells the story of my family in history and in faith, and how that's sustaining. And I'm just going to get started with it. It contains mostly photographs, not a lot of text. And so I'll be narrating the photographs and things as we go along. Okay, just to note on the tools I used, Personal Family Archives. I use Family Search, which is a free family tree website, and also Ancestry.com, which isn't listed here, and Facebook, whatever I could find. So, all the materials come from those places. Okay, just to start with migration, another theme besides faith, I'm going to talk about movement. Okay, because we all came from somewhere. Before we started, as we were doing our small talk with Pastor Land, he asked the question, "How did you get here?" Okay, and so here we are, me, a descendant of the enslaved, and me looking at an African, a Nigerian man, right? So, but here we meet. And this is talks about the pathway to get us to this place. And this diagram map shows how the migrants, or not migrants, how enslavement moved people. All right. And our target here is United States, where over 300,000, maybe more, Africans that were captured from the Western coast, all along the Western coast, arrived here in the United States, in the Caribbean, in Central and South America. So throughout North America and the islands. Okay. And once we arrived on American soil, that's where our story begins. All right. And for the record, and in my search for records, I could only find my earliest ancestor being born in 1805 in the United States. All right. And I know I said this is Faith of Our Mothers, but give me a minute to get to the women. But I use Henry Brown as a marker in that he's the only one that I can find a record of. And I will explain a little bit about that later. But this man, Henry Brown, was born in 1805, and as it was stated, in Tennessee. All right. And he died exactly July 19th, 1905, in Cleveland, Mississippi. So we could see that he had some movement from port cities like in Virginia and South Carolina and such. And then there's the movement in more to like the state of Tennessee where he was born. And then there was other movement as lands became available to Mississippi. All right. And people brought the enslaved with them. All right. And so in the original record, Henry Brown married a woman, Jillian Brown, or they were listed as married in the 1870 census. And from this union, they had 4 children. And the first is Paulina, next is Cyrus, then Isabella and Madison Brown. All right. For the Faith of Our Mothers, I will focus on my maternal line. All right. And starting from Henry and what was called Gilly or Jillian, I'm going to move to Paulina, the one on top, Paulina Brown, because that's my direct maternal ancestress. I'll just use that word, ancestress. And something interesting about this family and what their role was during enslavement in Mississippi, where Henry ended up, and Jillian, his wife, who was either born in North Carolina or Alabama, if there's some conflict in the records, they were located on a large plantation in the Delta in Mississippi. Her job was to care for the children while the other enslaved women worked, men and women worked in the field. So all the children there, the small children, were under her charge. And I'm talking about Jillian. And what Paulina did was help her mother take care of the children. Their father, Henry Brown, here, he was a house servant, so to speak, both a cook and a stable boy. All right. So that was their function. And this is the actual record of them at emancipation, the first, right after emancipation in 1870, because emancipation came in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. This is how they were listed as a family. And you could see them listed there together. And like I said before, we're going to pay attention to Paulina. Another noteworthy thing is that, they were poor, all right, at the end. And where they lived, they stayed close. In 1870, they stayed close to the plantation that they worked at in Washington County, Mississippi, in a city that's now called Leland, Mississippi. On a very, very large plantation. All right. And I did, in my research, I wanted to find, well, what was the first family church? All right. According to oral history, and I'll just say my grandmother, which is oral history, is that my family always belonged to the African Methodist Episcopal Church. All right. And the one that was closest to their homestead, so to speak, or the plantation where they continued to live in the 1870s and 80s was St. Matthew's African Methodist Episcopal Church, which was founded in 1867. And the AME Church nationally was founded in early 19th century, in 1816, I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, in Philadelphia by free Blacks. And they established different churches throughout the North and Northeast and moved south at the end of emancipation. And so this was one of the first AME church established in the Delta in Mississippi. And this is where my family first worshiped. Okay, and so I'm moving on to a first migration, and it's not the Great Migration, so to speak, and this is my family movement. In 1900, they moved from one area of Mississippi as a whole family unit. All right, so not just Paulina and her husband, but Paulina's brothers and their wives and their children. And the youngest son, Madison, was a landowner, and everyone lived around him at that time. Okay. And so in my search, this was like jackpot, because every name and every person was present there together, including my great grandmother, who was a young girl, and I'll get to her in a minute. Okay, so let's move to Paulina Brown, and this is a photograph, and this is I guess I would call it the pride of my family, to have this actual photograph of Paulina Brown Smith. And she was born enslaved as a child and worked as a child on a plantation with her mother, as I stated, and died in 1948. So her life spans nearly a century. And, into recent history, if we want to be frank. And as far as, and I'm thinking about faith, in 1997, I wrote a paper. I interviewed my grandmother, and this woman actually raised my grandmother. So what one can see is that it's not that far long ago, because the woman who was significant in my life was actually raised by someone who was formerly enslaved. Wow. So we can see the connections are very strong. So the memory is not past long ago. It also stays with me because I had physical connection with her great granddaughter, who was my grandmother. And one story that my grandmother said is that on Sunday mornings, when they were getting ready for church, that she would wear this taffeta like slip that was very loud when one walked. It was a very long skirt. And she would pace on the front porch back and forth, just praying and crying.
Wow.
And my grandmother said she was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And she said she would follow up behind her, praying and crying. All right. And so it was instilled in a way, right, from the very beginning. All right. And this is just another document. It's not as clear, but it's her marriage. And she actually was married in 1875 to a man named James Alexander Smith. And this, just look at their family. And in the record, and when we think about faith, we have to think about struggle and loss and maintaining connection with God. In the record, it's listed that she had 9 actual births. All right. And at that time of the record, I believe it was 1880, she only had 3 surviving children.
Wow.
Okay, which was very common. All right. And at the time of her death in 1948, she had 1 surviving child. All right. Wow. Yeah. And so to really continue on to the maternal line, I'm gonna move on to Frances Smith, which would be my great great grandmother. And in 1900, and this is a postcard of a post office from to the new city that the whole family on that sheet in 1900. This is the town that they moved to. It was called Cleveland, Mississippi. All right. And so to move on to Frances Smith, who married William Young, and Frances Smith died very young. All right. She was born in 1879 and died in 1902. All right. And excuse me, she left two daughters, Lillian Ann Boyd and Gertrude McCormick. And Gertrude is her married name. So her original name is Gertrude Young, like her father. But she had two girls, and she and her husband both died young, right? And so those two girls were raised also by that woman, Paulina. So she's mothering two generations.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to get to most of the picture portion and tell stories for the rest. That woman on the top of the photo is actually Lillian Ann Boyd. The Frances Smith daughter and Paulina's granddaughter. The young man is a visitor with a car. I'm not sure. His name is George. That's what the inscription says. And next to him is Melvina Smith, who was the only surviving child of Paulina when she died. And this is them as young women. Okay. And Frances Smith had a daughter, Gertrude, and that's the next woman in the line. And this is a photo of her, I would say around 1918, 1919, as a young woman. And she was born in 1898. So she's about 20 years old or on here. Okay. And Gertrude had a child named Willie Francis Austin Curtis Cummings. And I put her full name there. Her first name, Willie, was after her grandfather that died, Will Young. And Frances was her grandmother who died young. And Austin is her dad's name. And Curtis was her first husband's name. And Cummings was her second husband's name. So I didn't want to leave anybody out, you know.
Everybody will be represented.
All right. And so these are photos of her, Frances Cummings. This is my grandmother, who was born in 1915, and they're not very clear. The one on the right there is her in a backyard with dogs, right, with two dogs, and on the left with other children playing in the field. The story is some photographer came through and took this picture of the children. In later years, when she moved to Chicago, one of the children in the picture brought that to her.
Wow.
All right. And this is a cousin of hers, Melvina, the last surviving daughter. She had a daughter, and this is her daughter, Pearline. And these are the cousins there. All right. And I would say approximately 1925 to 2030, something around there. And continuing on with faith and passages, this is the family's church. They moved from St. Matthew's to Solomon Chapel AME Church. And this is them and this photo's not very clear, but it's a record of their attendance and of the community surrounding that church. And it was very prominent in their lives. And I'll call this the second, it's the actual Great Migration when we talk about the movement of African Americans. Our family went two places, to Memphis. One line went to Memphis. Paulina's little brother went to Memphis, and my grandmother and great grandmother went to Chicago. And this is Paulina's little brother's son. And I wanted to show this because it shows how African American soldiers fought in World War I. All right. And that's a portrait of one of his sons. And this is another one of his sons and daughters there who were located in Memphis in the early 20th century. Okay. And this is Frances Austin. This is her second husband because it was Curtis Dan Cummings. And she had a daughter, Laverne, whom I'm named after. And she had three other children. later. And Laverne died very young. In an interview I did with her in 1997, I asked her about that interview. And she said that God spoke to her because she would get her smaller children dressed and then go in the bathroom and cry. And God would speak to her and said, you have to tend to the children that you have with you. Right. And so she lost her oldest daughter at a young age. And I'm calling this the Great Migration. This is the Chicago Inn. And I think this is emblematic of these young people who left the segregated Jim Crow South to find life in big cities like Chicago. And Frances, my grandmother, is the one standing with the iron in her hand, and she's sewing with her girlfriends here. I do recognize the pretty one that's sitting right directly under her. Her name is Bertha, and they lived across the street from one another until they were well in their late 70s, early 80s. Right there in Chicago, they lived across the street from one another, and there were two other friends there sewing, and probably, I don't know, maybe they have a little business going. But these are the faces of those young women who were brave enough to leave and to pursue lives in Chicago. And I'll end with more photos, but this is Frances. It's not very clear, but this is Frances and her mother, Gertrude, who, and this is in Chicago in Washington Park. All right. And this is Frances and her daughter, Katrina, who was second. And that was, the faith of our mothers going on with mother to daughter. And this is her second daughter, Katrina. And I think this is just a fabulous photo because it shows the mother's love and how things don't change. We see these pictures on Facebook all the time, just like that. And this is her with all of her children there. And this is in Chicago in the early 50, around 1950. And right there, and I don't have a chart one for this, but this is actually my mother.
Wow.
Yeah. And this
she's watching right now on Facebook.
I know. So we're showing all of her business, right? But to be truthful, the faith continues, right? And so, this is the baby girl of the family, right? And this also continue. I don't know if you remember the little baby in the carriage from a long time ago. This is her with her mother. Continue on with the women in that theme. And this is Frances and her husband, William, in Chicago, in the public housing in Harold Ickey's homes. They no longer exist, but this is them in the 1960s. And there's another picture of Francine as a baby. And, I'm moving on a little bit going forward, but talking about more mothers, that little baby with the bare bottom, that's her with the white top on as a young woman. And that's her older sister, Katrina. And this was Mother's Day, actually, 1971, them as young women. And this is, and I'll end with this. This is Frances Cummings, Willie Francis, Austin Curtis Cummings, returning home to her church in Mississippi years later to make a trip. She used to make sojourns there. And I'll just read this little story and I'll end with this. She talks about God in her life. And she says, as a young teenager, she believed that God spoke to her. She says that I was walking along the road, meditating and thinking about everything in my life, about how my mother promised to send me something and wasn't there, how my great-grandparents were old and did not see about my education and did not understand my needs. And the voice of God spoke to me and said, "Lo, I will be with you always." At that point, I knew everything would be all right.
Wow, that is awesome. Awesome. I'll talk a bit about that when you are done. Yeah.
Well, I'll end it there. I wanted to, because of time, I didn't want to take up too much more time.
Okay. All right. So we will take up the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So wow, that's powerful, and that's also some diligent work that you did there.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question to you is, if someone wanted to do that for themselves, like people who are watching right now, people are just amazed and all that. How can they do exactly the same thing? I know you were putting your research skills into into use, but how can people watching who want to also trace their own heritage, how can they do it?
Well, I would say talk if you have access to whomever your oldest, closest relative is. I would say begin by talking with them.
Mm,
All right. Even before we jump in a database or search for a website,
mm,
when I started this journey, and I'm still on it,
mm,
um, I interviewed her. This is in a paper I wrote for a class at Northern Illinois University. I know you're
mm.
familiar with it.
Yeah.
Bef- and it was just me talking with her and
Mm,
recording and taking notes. And
mm,
right now we have access to more technology where you
mm,
can actually record using your phone, but any stories, and I would say be patient
mhm,
and tell them to start with themselves and their parents or their favorite older relative. But I
mhm.
think that's a great place to start,
Yeah.
because it's the story underneath, right?
Mhm,
We have records. We can find them using databases like ancestry.com, but with Ancestry, that's a subscription. But
mhm,
then there's Family Search, which is free,
mhm,
and you can go there and search for records also, and
mm.
census records and things of that nature. But I would say start with the stories because that's where the richness comes in.
Thank you. I asked that because, a lot of people, when we talk about Black history, like Black history,
Hmm.
we talk about the macro Black, history, like the big picture, right?
Hmm.
What has happened in the lives of Black people. Well, few people actually go and look at their own personal Black history, which is what you have done right now. So, I would like to encourage people to do that. I think I also need to have an interview with my mom and and get some things out of her, you
Right,
know, and
right.
write.
Yeah. Let's think about that history as history in like a reverse context, because
Mhm,
our people, be it our families and their immediate communities, they all lived in historic times, and
mhm,
there was an impact on their lives. But what did they do? You know, my descendants. What did you all do during the pandemic?
mhm,
Right? What make it personal? Right.
mhm,
So what did my family do at the end of enslavement when
mhm,
when slavery was abolished, or what happened to them during World War II? All
mhm.
right. And where did they live when they came up during the Great Migration, and how did they persist and survive?
Thank you. So, what's
Mhm.
the power of this? That's my, next question for you. What,
Mhm.
what did this do to you? Like, I want you to speak to the people watching. What is the power of knowing your heritage? What did it do to you as you were studying, these women, your family tree? What was the impact on you?
I'm taking a moment. The impact is, I would say, is beyond words.
Mm,
It's beyond words. And if I have that actual recorded conversation in 1997, I'll just tell you a small story. At the In 1977-ish, whenever Roots was aired, that's a famous story of family history by Alex Haley, and there was a miniseries event in the United States, and every home was watching it. And I
is
might
that
have been, hmm?
Roots? Is it
Yeah,
Roots? Yeah,
yeah.
we're watching it in Nigeria too.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah. Kunta Kinte, or is it Kunta Kinte?
Exactly. So yeah, Alex Haley went way back, but
Mhm,
most of us have a wall we can't get behind. His
mhm,
oral history was rich on that. But
mhm,
when that aired, when I was a very small girl, they had might have been in first grade. An assignment was to do a family tree,
mhm, mhm,
and I never forget sitting in the room with my grandmother, and she giving me all these names of all these people, and I didn't know who they are,
mhm,
but it lingered with me,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And I will say it has inspired my walk in life. And it gives you a grounding to know that you came from somebody and something. All
Mm,
right. So, like you said before about this history being big, it's
mm,
not so grand. The narrative is not so grand. It's
mm.
intimate, it's
Yeah.
personal. And it had even inspired my dissertation,
Yeah. Oh, wow. Awesome.
where I took an episode in
Mm,
my grandmother's life,
mm,
and when she was with women in public housing, other women, and
mhm,
they were campaigning for a library, and they did a lot of community work. All
mhm,
right. A lot of what we call social justice now, but it was justice work by mothers.
mm, mm.
So I took that and fashioned my dissertation. So
Wow.
it's always with me. And I'm writing a grant now to study African Americans who do genealogy work,
Mm.
and,
Awesome.
and what kind of records they have. So it stays with me. It
Mm.
gives you a sense of self that you can never, well, that never lets you go.
Yeah. It's identity, right? A
Mhm,
sense of
mhm,
identity.
mhm,
Wow. So the spiritual part, that prayer that you read, that was
mhm,
powerful. I mean, what did it do to you to know that your ancestors were praying and
mhm,
they went through tests, they went through trials, they went through all kinds of stuff, but
mhm,
their journeys continued through you, right? And
mhm,
those coming after you, right? Their travail continued. How
mhm.
what do you think was the impact of their prayers on on the family and on you especially? Or
I
what's
was
your reflection about those prayers? Yeah. Mhm.
I think it's the the prayers of the ancestors has blessed us in ways that we can't even imagine.
Mhm.
And reading that now, because when I did that interview with her, I had just turned 26. So, I was young and I was like, oh, I just want to do this, but I didn't really reflect on what the Holy Spirit and prayer and service and worship, how much
Mhm.
of an impact that had on her life. And
Mhm.
it was my ancestors' gift to me,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's the way I see it. And it gave me a template to know, for me to find that out as a young woman, that right now I would say would be 100 years ago. On
Mhm.
Sunday mornings, my ancestor would
Mhm.
march and pray and cry out to the Lord.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so it's a wonderful template.
Yeah, it just listening to watching that, I just kept on telling myself that some of the prayers that we are praying now, praying for our kids, praying for our grandkids, those prayers are going to go beyond us. Of course, if Jesus tarries, the world continues hundreds of
Mhm,
years after now. They'll
mhm,
be talking about our travails and prayers, and it will
mhm,
be done. There's a prayer that I have been praying. Just wanted, I said, God, I want to have my children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, that I want them to be leaders in all the spheres of influence. That there will come a time in the United States and in the world that
mhm,
they are talking about leaders in this, they'll be mentioning their names. I read about a man that did that at the early part of the United States, and they listed all the people. Senators came out of him, presidents came out of him. It's Jonathan Edwards, if you've ever heard of
uh-huh,
it. For all kinds of people leading in different places came out of the guy,
mhm.
just because the guy, looked up to God. So I've been praying that prayer, that because, somehow we just know now that our lives don't end with us. You understand? Like,
Right.
yeah, just like we have
Right.
Abraham,
Yeah, yeah,
we're still enjoying the blessing of Abraham. Our lives don't
right.
end with us. Our lives continue even after we have gone to another world.
Exactly. And I just want to add one anecdote. And I said that Jillian was kept the children on the plantation for
Mm.
those men and women who were working in the fields, and her daughter helped her. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there is a legacy of educators in my
Mm.
family
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
And actually, Paulina, the girl that helped her, she became a midwife
Mm-hmm.
and was helping with children. My grandmother Paulina's great-granddaughter. She was a preschool teacher. She did early childhood education.
Mhm.
And my mother is a school teacher. I have a cousin that's a school principal. He has a daughter who's finishing her degree in special education. I am a college professor, but we all do it in different ways. And some of us are Pied Pipers and do education in different ways, but there's some legacy that get passed on.
You know, and the same thing, you know, like my family, my grandfather was the first teacher in his hometown. I had a story. He had a bicycle to teach people. When I used to go to his house, then he had a library of books that I used to read, Treasure Island, all those kind of books in there. My dad, of course, same library. He became an engineer and all that. But I discovered that I am a teacher. I'm an educator, and then I looked at, you know, like my brother, like just everyone. There's just this thing about passing information and all that that just continues. That like the legacy just continues. Like what we're doing right now is beyond us. Some people are going to inherit it from us, and they will just find out that they have some passion, they have some, you know, some desires to do certain things, and they'll be like, where did this come from? And you know, you can say, wow, it came from our heritage. Wow, Dr. Gray, I'm still going to bring you back at the end, right?
Okay. All right. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. So, but now I'm just going to share some videos, and then we're going to have our next guest who is going to be coming to join. I mean, who is going to be joining us, and we're going to continue this conversation. Everybody, you know, continue making your comments, and you know, you will have the time to, you know, to ask questions and all that as we move on. Thank you very much, Dr. Gray.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll take you backstage now.
Hi, my name is Ella Tamanokombia, and today I'd like to share with you a little bit about Your Neighbor and You. Your Neighbor and You is a nonprofit organization which positively impacts children and communities around the world. We are currently active in eastern Uganda, supporting 25 orphans and 35 widows. Joseph, who is a Leading Lights graduate, is our country coordinator. Some of the programs we are currently running in the community include a community garden which produces soybeans. The community came together to plant, weed, and harvest a crop earlier this year. Monthly, we gather the widows together and go through Dr. Gregory Lanajuela's book, The 21 Immutable Laws of Relationships, in order to help develop these women to be influencers and leaders in their community and through their future business endeavors. We have recently asked the widows what type of farming they would like to do on their individual lands, and they have decided to plant peanut and soybean crops throughout this next year. We have challenged them that if they can individually clear their lands, we will provide them with this seed by the end of February 2021. In this year of open heavens, we are trusting God to make way for us to complete the community center. This has already been started by faith, as Joseph and others have been burning bricks for the building. We are also planning towards a chicken farm of 100 chickens, which will provide revenue, which will be used for other projects, as well as a goat farm later this year. We have chosen to invest in the lives of these community members, and we have already begun to see the fruit coming forth. Since beginning our monthly get-togethers with these widows, over 21 of them have called on the name of the Lord for salvation. Thank you, CityLight and LDC, for being a part of the vision with your encouragement, prayers, and support. And thank you, Dr. Land, for your investment in Tom and I through the Leading Lights training, and for even taking me with the Leading Lights team to Uganda, Kenya, and a few years ago, where you enabled us to be able to meet Joseph and to connect in order to start this initiative successfully. Thank you so much. We are so grateful to have you a part of our lives. And thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you to all of those of you who have been giving to the LDC mission. And we're just excited for what God is going to do in 2021 through the LDC. Thank you.
All right, all right, all right. Welcome back, everyone. Powerful story by Hella there. We're going to go to our next guest right now. This is going to be powerful. So I am so privileged to have him to be here. I know he's such a very busy man, and I was really praying when when I requested, for him to come, and I'm so glad that he made the time to be here. And he's always done that for us at the CityLight Church ever since I met him over 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, actually. He's been a mentor to me in the city, a father in the city. He's one of our board members at the CityLight Church, so he's one of my bosses. So I also did my internship when I was in Bible school at Moody then, and I had to do my internship. I was privileged to do my internship under him and to learn from him. And since that time, we've had a close-knit relationship. A lot of people who are part of CityLight know his wife very well. His wife comes almost every year to the women's conference to speak. She was there last year to powerful, prophetess, Apostle Katie Pitcher. So I'm so excited today to welcome to SPICEE Night, Bishop Pitcher. I will be bringing him up in a moment, but I want to say that the reason why I really wanted him to come was because this is someone that has labored in this city for 38 years, and you've labored in the city for 38 years, and now he continues to labor. Right now, he's moved into an apostolic phase where he's actually doing things citywide, with the Together Chicago, and also overseeing many children that have come out of him, that planted churches and all that, including myself too. So I am so privileged to have on SPICEE Night today Bishop Ed Pitcher. Welcome, Bishop.
Thank you, Pastor Lamb, for having me. It's a privilege to be here with you.
Wow, thank you so much, Bishop, for joining. Come on, those of you watching online, let's celebrate Bishop. I want you to put it in there. Welcome, Bishop. Welcome, Bishop. Let's celebrate Bishop. Yes, 38 years of laboring, and it continues. So thank you so much for joining us. So my wife is greeting you. Yeah. All right. So, Bishop, how are you feeling today? How's everything going?
It's going very well. We are very busy with our work with Together Chicago. We just had our citywide prayer meeting, and good report. You guys were on there. Thank you for being there. We had a total.
You. I was rooting for you. I was posting on the Bishop. Yeah.
We had a total of 160 churches represented in that prayer meeting. That is just a powerful thing. Every neighborhood, the 77 neighborhoods, we had all but 3 neighborhoods represented. Every police district was covered. We had 50 other community service provider groups. So it's a powerful virtual meeting. I didn't think it was going to be that powerful or that comprehensive, but we exceeded our own expectations. 160 plus churches being involved together. And that really is the work of Together Chicago, to make individual congregations in the city work like one church, because that's what we are. We're one church. And so it was a thrill for that.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you for the work that you do. Sometimes I look back. I don't know if you remember the first time you met Dr. Fielder. Do you remember? I remember that day. I was in his class then at Moody, and then I was to do my internship with you. So he said that he had to come. He wanted to meet you. So we came to Inglewood then.
Yeah.
And I remember that day. And look at what is happening right now. I just look at it and see how God, just a little thing I can lead to a lot of stuff.
Exactly. So Doc, Doc and I talk several times a week. We are actually on staff together at Together Chicago. So we interact with each other on a frequent basis.
So it's awesome. It's awesome. So,
Yeah.
Bishop, you have carried this city in your heart for decades. You have prayed, you have labored, you have cried, you have wept. You have done a lot in this city.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, a lot. And I really honor that. I honor that. And I thank you. Thank you so much for all the foundation that you have laid that we are now enjoying, now. I just wanted you to talk about the city of Chicago, talk about yourself also. Well, first of all, what do you think about Dr. Gray's presentation?
It was powerful. I wanted to interrupt a half a dozen times and chime in. She was hitting on such a powerful stream, and I like the way you encapsulated it. We often talk about African American history or Black history as a macro exercise, but she brought it personal. This is, while all of this was going on, this is what my family was experiencing, and that's just powerful. It was a powerful perspective. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, awesome. Bishop, how did you get to Chicago? Was it through the Great Migration or?
Well, my parents came from both my mother's parents and my father's parents made the migration. My father's people are from the Carolinas, and my mother's people are from Florida. Well, my mother's people are from Cuba and from Florida, and they came up in the Great Migration. When World War II was at fever pitch, our industrial mechanism, our industrial capacity had increased by several 100%. And so scores of jobs, hundreds, thousands of jobs began to open up in the industrialized North. And that was the perfect opportunity for former slaves and people in the South to make the migration up north to get the factory jobs that were opening up. And my parents, my grandparents were the ones who came up and brought my father with, and they settled in Chicago.
Awesome. Wow. I want to tell you something a lot of people don't know about me. And when I was looking at your eclectic, mix of, background. So since we're talking about heritage, I am a quarter Brazilian too.
Think about that, right? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So my grandmother actually came from Brazil, my dad's mom. Yeah. So our family had been taken. Our ancestors had been taken to Brazil as slaves.
Yes.
So they retraced their steps back to Nigeria, to Lagos, Nigeria.
Wow.
So they settled in Lagos, Nigeria, and that's when my grandfather met her. So I'm a descendant of slaves. So
the Great Passage Triangle. It was Western Africa, England, the Southern United States, and Brazil in South America. That's that triangle piece. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm proud to share that. So I've never been to Brazil. I look forward to going to Brazil one of these days. Yeah,
I'll go with you.
Okay, sir. Well, we were supposed to have traveled, some years ago.
Yes.
We still have to do that.
Yes, we do. We do.
Yes.
So
where do you
want to start? Our previous presenter, she talked about the AME Church, and I did a little study on the AME Church. It started with Richard Allen. Richard Allen, he was trained as a Methodist, but there was this doctrine or this narrative that slaveholders in this country, that this country itself had to tell itself to justify this ongoing institution of slavery. And the underpinning philosophy was that people of African descent were not fully human. They were 3/5 human. And so they did not need to be afforded the same rights as humans were afforded. That was the narrative that they had to feed themselves. And the whole racial complex, that whole idea was born out of that philosophical posturing to make slavery palatable for this country, who calls himself a Christian country. So that was that underpinning. And Richard Allen, as he was trained and was taught or was treated in the Methodist Church as a second-class citizen and was not allowed full access, he broke away and started the African American Episcopal Church.
Okay, wow. I know there were a bunch of churches like that that broke away because of racism and all that. Like some of these, even some Pentecostal ones that started the African version.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was part of that. They came up from the South and started in the North with the settlements. And I think maybe you should ask some questions because I can get off on a tangent. And 2 hours later, I'll still be talking.
Okay, so let me start with you personally. You were part of the Black Panther movement. You were a Black Panther, right?
I was, yes.
Wow. Tell us about Black Panther. What was it all about, and how did you get
Black Panthers? During that time, I was in the Black Panthers in 1969 and 70, 1968 to 1970. And that was during the time of the civil rights struggle. And I recall as a young man of 16 to 17 years old, I saw footage of the Southern Christian Leadership Council doing sit-ins in diners in the South. And they would be beaten and pummeled by angry white crowds with no help from the police at all. As a matter of fact, when they got beaten up by the crowd, then the police arrested them for loitering on the street from being knocked to the street. So it was just bad. And I thought these people have a level of courage that I just had not seen. And I realized I had to get in the fight, but I did not have the courage to get in the fight and not hit back. And then I heard Fred Hampton. And Fred Hampton, the motto of one of the mottos of the Black Panthers was praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. I can relate to that. So I joined the Black Panthers, and really in my heart, as a 17-year-old boy, I thought we were going to replace the corrupt government system with a righteous government system. That's what I thought, not understanding how large that scale was. So I soon became disgruntled with that. But I joined the Black Panthers, not as a gang, but as a political party trying to justify what was happening in this country.
Wow. So what was your role there? Tell us some of your exploits in the Black Panthers.
So I sold the papers, but in the United States there was not a feeding program. We did not feed our children on the way to school. And one of the things that the Black Panthers discovered is if a child has a full stomach, they are more prone to learn. And so we started the first breakfast program that has now been adopted by schools across the nation, a nutritional program. It's billions of dollars now being spent on child nutrition for schools. And that was started by the Black Panthers. And some of the first meal, I scrambled eggs in 1969 and fed to children before we started the feeding program in the public schools.
So why was the government so against the Black Panthers? Why? What was it?
Well, it was the Black Panthers was an extension. The government, again, buying into that narrative that they had to feed themselves. The government was part of the systematic racism that was taken. A couple of things that there were laws on the books in many states of the Union that a Black man, when he died, could not give his land to his children. When he died, any land that he owned went to the state. And so there was not a transference of wealth. Wealth is built over generations. People get rich in one generation are an anomaly. People get rich over several generations, and wealth is passed on and built. And if a man is not able to give his property to his children so that they can build on them, you ensure that poverty will take a stronghold in that lineage. That was one of the things. And then when the GIs came out from Second World War, and they started all of these families, the baby boom, of which I'm a part. The government would underwrite or give loans to the former military people so that they could buy homes, except they would not give those loans to African Americans who served. And so my father, who served in the Second World War in the Navy, was not able to get a loan from a bank to buy a home. He did buy a home, but he bought a home from unscrupulous people. He bought a home from people who bought the property and sold the property and financed the property. That's illegal today, but that was a practice it was called blockbusting. That was a practice that was going on there. So developers would build because the economy was growing and the cities were getting congested. So developers began to build suburban land developments, and in order to attract white folks out there, they would give them these government loans. And these unscrupulous real estate agents would buy one house at a premium price and then put up a for sale sign. And this is documented. They would hire a black woman with a baby buggy, and she would walk up and down the block. And they would go house to house, and they say, the Joneses sold to those people, and your property value is going to go down. So we'll buy it for pennies on the dollar. And they did. So a house that was probably worth at the time $15,000, they bought for $4,000 because the people wanted to get out. And then they would act as agents for the new house that they would buy in the suburbs. And then they would in turn sell a house to an African American. My father was one of them. He had a job at the steel mill. He was a former Navy Navy veteran. So he had a job at the steel mill. He had a good job. So they bought the house for $4,000. They sold it to him for $16,000. And then they financed the house because he couldn't go to the bank to get a loan. So they would call a contract sale. He would pay monthly on the house, and if he missed a month,
they would just take it.
They could take the house from him without court proceedings.
Wow, man! Wow. So now you are getting into some stuff right now. Let's narrow down to Chicago. I want us to two streams. So there are some heroes that with your broad history of Chicago, some heroes of the faith, some people that have, like they've left us Chicago in a better way, both in the faith, flow, government, and all that. And there are some villains. You mentioned some of them right now. I just wanted you to give us like a picture of how Chicago became what it is right now, faith-wise, and also community-wise. Talking about how the South Side became the South Side, the West Side became the West Side, and then with the faith flow also.
So Chicago is uniquely positioned in the center of the country, and the city of Chicago is called the second city. The reason it's called the second city is it was the second largest city up until 1962. It was larger than Los Angeles. It was one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, especially after it burned down. It burned down. And it began to build, and there was some building revolutions and innovations that came in Chicago because we had to rebuild. We have the most movable bridges of any city in the world because there's a river that runs right through the middle of the city of Chicago, and we built right over that river. So there's some very strong innovations in the city of Chicago, and there's some failings in the city of Chicago because it is so central to the economic, the transportation and economic hub of the city. It attracted so many immigrants from Poland, from Sweden, from many of the European nations, from China. All of those places came and converged to Chicago. And Chicago has, and Dr. Feuder's book, has 77 distinct neighborhoods with history and heritage. And that's a good thing. Some of the churches in the city of Chicago actually added to the problem as opposed to alleviating the problem. I'm not going to even mention names, but if I did, there are some prominent white pastors who were part of the white flight out of the city of Chicago and did not raise an objection at all to the unscrupulous practices that went on in the city of Chicago. And when the church fails to speak prophetically to the issues of their society, then it opens the door for anger and resentment and violence. And hence we had our riots of 1968 that burned many of the cities, many portions of the cities across this nation. And it caused a rift between the law enforcement institution and the communities. That's why today there is a broad rift in many in many communities across this country. There's a rift between law enforcement and the community, African-American community.
Wow. So still on that flow. So the first thing that you noticed, the failure of the church was not speaking out to those things and just allowing it, to go on. And that was mainly white pastors. What about black pastors where,
And so the dynamic with the black pastor is, we have African Americans have the same bad habits of everybody else, and that is we have to eat regular meals and we have to sleep indoors. Those are bad habits. If I didn't have those habits, I wouldn't need money at all. But I got those habits, and my family have those habits, and so it takes money for me to do this. And the black preacher has been as broke as the 10 Commandments.
that Bishop, you have this statement, there's something you say, I just go and write it down. I've never heard that one before. As broke as
and so when you are that impoverished and that needy, Pastor, I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but it is a struggle to keep a perspective, a godly perspective on things, because God is the God of abundance. One of the things that was the earmark of the first church was there was no lack in the church. That whole lack, when churches suffer lack and the preacher suffers lack, it changes the way he sees things and he does things. And that's been one of the chief complaints against the African-American church. And it is not because African-American pastors or black pastors are unscrupulous. It's just that they're hungry. They are a half a step, one sneeze away from poverty. And it's hard to maintain without the dignity of taking care of your family and the dignity of paying your own bills and the dignity of ownership and all kinds of things. It's hard to accomplish that when you are suffering that lack like that. And so the African-American church has been underfunded because the African-American community has been underfunded. And that's a different set of dynamics that goes on.
Yeah. So that leaves, that temptation of being manipulated by power structures, those who have the money and all that, to muzzle you, keep you quiet and all that, right?
Right. And, politicians were able to influence them by giving one or two a job or a few handouts here and there. And African-American preachers, not all of them, there's some who I admire to this day, and I pattern my life after them. Some will withstand city government and withstand the institutions, but for the most part, not for the most part, there were some who just put the needs of their family in a prominent place and had to do things that probably wouldn't ordinarily do.
Yeah. So Bishop, looking at how Chicago and then the faith community has grown, or let me say progressed over the past 40 years or so, that or more that you have been watching.
Yeah.
Could you give us like a timeline and also talk about what has been handed over to us, our generation now?
Yeah, That's a very good. So this what the pandemic has done for us is it has accelerated and highlighted the need for us to reform the way the church is organized and expresses itself.
Yes.
I've been reading some books on church history, how the church expressed itself during the different economic changes globally. The early church had that was under Rome had the privilege of being in existence where there was currency, where there was a capitalist economy in place where people could exchange coins for goods and services.
Yeah.
It went from agriculture, when the Jew would come to Jerusalem to offer, he would have to bring his livestock with him. But then the Romans took over and this coinage system took place. And so then the Jew didn't have to bring livestock with him. He could go to Jerusalem and exchange some coins for livestock.
Wow.
We take that for granted.
Yes.
And that whole coinage system was the foundation for the spread of the gospel, because Rome, the church was under a Roman kind of infrastructure, and so it spread along the trade routes. But then when Rome fell, the church went to a feudal system because it was a feudal system, and if you didn't bring your sheep with you, you didn't have sheep because there was no coinage exchange.
Yeah.
So each time, I said all that to say, each time the church had to adjust its expression to flow in the system in which it was embedded. And so now we find ourselves in this very information system. So here we are having this meeting. Yeah. I'm sitting in my second floor office with my phone in horizontal in landscape mode, talking to you.
In my basement.
And you're in your basement, and people are watching all over this city. So that is part of our expression now. That's built in now. And we have to do church in such a way that we are not dependent on a building. If you didn't have a building right now, that's not a problem at this point. Not a problem. As a matter of fact, a building may become a liability because you're not using it. Now, I think we're going to get back to the gathering place, but it's going to be different because attendance, if you don't have the virtual component in your gathering going forward, you're going to miss a lot of people.
Yes.
If you're not equipped to take offerings electronically, you're going to miss a lot of offerings. So it has changed the way we do our expression permanently. We're in an information age now, and we have to think through what does the expression of the church look like. The other thing is our society is breaking down along racial lines.
Yes.
Especially in all globally, but especially in America, we're breaking down. I mean, we just experienced what only half the nation recognized as an insurrection. The people who tried to take over the government, they didn't even see it as an insurrection. They don't even see something went wrong. And so there's also different sets of facts that people subscribe to that have little or no bearing on the actual facts.
Yep. And so, people just listen, they are in echo chambers. So you have people listening to this social media or this news. The other ones listen to the other news. Everybody has their own news and all that.
Select the reality. This is not my reality. The world, for me, the world is flat. So I'm in that reality. So so what that says for the church has to think through now how our voice is going to be validated to this culture so that we can penetrate the culture. And I think if we don't go back to power demonstrations, we only get half the population.
Wow. Power demonstrations.
There has to be power, because that power is a universal language.
Yes, yes.
when somebody gets healed, I don't care who you are, the blind man, whether he's a righteous man or not, I don't know. But one thing I know, whereas I was blind, now I see. That is undeniable. And so the church has to really pivot and pirouette into a power dynamic. We have to pray through for power. If we don't have power, we're going to miss. We're only going to get that small enclave of people that drink the same Kool-Aid that we drink.
It's interesting that you mentioned power. I know right now one of the things that you do in the city is that you have to interface with people from different churches, pastors, and all that. And Chicago, from what I've seen, is largely evangelical. A lot of evangelical.
It's a large Pentecostal branch in Chicago.
Yeah, there's Pentecostal, but it's like, but in terms of influence, like it seems that if people that don't necessarily subscribe to what we're talking about power, I just wanted to ask you how you've been able to navigate that and how can we get that to be more mainstream?
Well, there is nothing that speaks louder than a good example.
Yes, sir. Yes,
when they see it manifested, then they realize, okay, that's the reality that we have to deal with. Because my rhetoric is not going across. Power is going to be what goes across. So we have to get to the place where we demonstrate that. It's been my prayer for the last period of time that, Lord, let your power be manifested in this generation. And so we just have to dig into the dynamic. And I don't think the dynamic is that far removed. You and I know that it is the power of prayer. Yeah. If the church does not pivot into a strong prayer movement where the presence of God, it bathes our gathering and bathes our meetings and propels our words. If the prayer presence and power of God doesn't do that, then we're no different than Rush Limbaugh or somebody else or Donald.
Wow. Exactly what you're talking about is what God has been speaking to my heart. Even at CityLight, this month, our retreat and all that, the emphasis was prayer and fasting. Fast, pray for the expression of God's power for heaven on earth. Our theme for this year is heaven on earth. Just busting forth on the earth in manifestations of power. Just so great to hear you confirm that's what you've been praying about.
That is the thing. That's the only thing that's going to think about it. People can reject the truth of the gospel because it doesn't fit into the facts that they have curated for themselves.
Yeah.
But they cannot deny a person that used to wear a colostomy bag that's not wearing that bag because the Lord healed.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So Bishop, we're going to come back again for with you and Dr. Gray. I just want to quickly play something and then we're going to come back and we're going to round up with that. I want to thank you so much. So I'll take you backstage now and then I will share the video.
I'll be sitting right here.
All right, sir. All right, guys. So let's quickly watch this and then we're going to be back with Bishop and Dr. Gray to round up. I don't think I shared the sound. I am going to reshare that because I don't think I shared the sound. 1 second. Okay, cool.
Yeah, before I could speak a word, too far before I had an umbilical cord, before I could grow. Let's go way back, you see, before Adam and Eve could take the fall. Overall, in the beginning was the word, and the word was the Lord. I'm gonna praise the Lord, fighting my battles and winning these wars. I can't understand how your life is your love. With all of the mess that I make after all, you stay in the line, man, you picking my cause. I'm blaming the devil for my stupid flaws. Why you don't want to know? You see lifting the curse. You showing the way, but we run from the cross. Since the day we were born, it's a breath that we got. So it's crazy to see how we act like the voice and we taking advantage of your reckless love. I kinda wanna be the one who can really get to know ya, but again, like, it's really hard to figure your ways out. What kind of guy gonna hold ya when you mess up his vein, yeah, and you just gonna act like you're sorry. Ain't no time you're back to a story. Give him the glory, but he been so holy, still loves it. The cameras keep rolling. I cannot hold it. This love is overwhelming. It's infinite, homie. Dear Lord, when I think about the things that I see and the deeds that shit can't make me to speak. I been, you're the king on my screen. You lead, I be your servant. Yes, I bow at your feet. Just ways to sleep. My courage is bleak. I'm tripping a minute. I'm sober again. It does have excuses I make, so I sing. It's crazy, but you love the fool out of me. Your love is reckless. You know that I'm righteous. And words that you get us, but I say you're the greatest. You're fearless. You're the highest. No contest. You're the biggest. Your love is the deepest. I'm joining. I'm blessed. This message ain't gotta stress. Give me his race on me like his guest. Only once me the press for the mark towards Christ. I couldn't handle it. I feel the test. I thought it was over when I hit the ground, but you came right over and wiped out my frown. But Jesus, your name is a beautiful sound. Cause if you never let go, it's been found. No more bound, cause he stays around. This love is a miracle, don't need a sign. Just like this, it's turning water to wine. Now my life is transforming this love and I'm drowned.
No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, now you won't tear down, coming after me.
They gon' try, they gon' fight, they gon' strive to get it right. I will fight, I'ma let it slide. It's alright, love is on my side. Ride or die, what I'm talking about. We can ride, got me for life. Check out my fight, love is overdrive. But do I have to be so satisfied? You made it, we break it, you clean it, we messed it, you save it, disordered. You find it, we lost it. You the guy with the heart of it, and that's not gonna cut it. Your love is the bomb, it's exploding my charm. And you talk to fight for what you define it. You trust to go through it. This love makes me crazy, I just cannot get it. How come you just do it? You wasted and it's fine if I don't return it. Sometimes we plan it and sometimes we done. We're losing our manners, we mess up your song. But you've been Jehovah, you right out of wrongs. And give us the courage, your love of us all. This love is overwhelming and it's never ending. This is the way I caught it.
It's a reckless love of God.
It's that King Beats.
As we reverence the relevance of our melanin, the historicity of Black excellence is prevalent, parading our pioneers for our pleasure and paying homage to those who hung for our heritage. But I won't act as if I'm an activist. I'm an African-American Trinitarian, more of a Black evangelist, and I was called a contradiction for the same reason I'm hated twice as much, being Black and a Christian. I didn't mean to go for the trifecta when I told y'all that I believed in the Trinity. Then I realized if they hate Christ without a cause, well, they'll hate me for anything. But I won't give them a reason. I'm unapologetically apologetic. I just added to my defense. I'm weaving all conjecture and every arbitrary claim to the obituary that couldn't carry his name because he's still living. Oh, y'all thought death did us part. So he renewed his vows. Long story short, I'm still with him. Monogamous and monotheistic. Yeah, I'm about that life. Some may mention Jesus, but we ain't talking about the same Christ, so they call me whitewashed. And that ain't even the color of his blood. I bathe in it. So y'all tell me what's the color of his love when my belief thrived in Tunisia before Europe even was. I'm all in North Africa. You see, I got the Trinity from Tertullian. This hooligan got a hold of Athanasius and went to school again. Then read the slave narratives like, I'll never be a fool again. I came to put to silence the ignorance of foolish men that confuse true Christianity with this Western depiction. It's not a white man's religion, just suffered from the white man's rendition. But do you see the mental condition? When we try to counteract Christ's cross-cultural convictions, salvation is independent of pigment. For instance, Christ was treated more Negro than you. And you could see the domino effect on the big six because Nero had Simon Bar-Jonas, Peter rolled too. So don't think you'll accomplish anything when you lock the game, because when Christ rolled the stone and exposed his hands, all you seen was a double blank. The tomb and your expression, his right hand, and his left hand, the truth and your suppression is proof that you're rejected. And they try to tell me that Christians can't be conscious. Stop trying, they lying. We're both conscious. I'm just praying theirs not seared with a hot iron, because hell hath enlarged herself. So working out your own soul salvation is the only way to exercise. Y'all pray for me.
Awesome. I was doing that. That was powerful. That was powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So great to have both of you back as we round up Spicy Night today. Dr. Gray, great to have you back. And
nice to be back. I enjoy the conversation, Bishop.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you first, Dr. Gray, what did you think of what we shared, Bishop and I shared? Anything came to your mind while we were talking?
Well, I at first I thought about how his story began when mine left off, and somewhat because I didn't go into too much detail, but to understand the faith of the people that brought themselves to the Chicago area and the legacy of that. There is some brightness there, right? Because there's plenty of organization, but also many hills to climb at the same time. So I was just really enriched by everything he stated about the state of the Black church in the city.
Awesome, thank you.
I wanted to add something that I didn't. One of the voices of that migration was the Chicago Defender.
Yes,
was the largest black publication in the nation, and it told stories. Yes, industrialized North, and its circulation was in the South, and people read that newspaper and came to the
North Star. It was like people were saying there's hope in the North, and
exactly.
The Pullman, place.
The point is, there's still power in the stories that we relate to each other, and we have to, especially in this narrative-driven culture that we have, there's got to be a good story that we present to people to bring them closer to the truth of gospel.
Yes.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask both of you, quickly, like bringing it to present day, if you wanted to speak to current day Christians, those who are watching right now, of what should be our priorities to honor the faith of our fathers, our mothers, our pioneers. What should be our priorities now?
I think, because I've been grappling with this, what does the Lord require from us, and what will honor him, and by in so doing honor the heritage of the people upon whose lives our life is built. I think if we, as they did, believe that we can make things better, because one of the greatest temptations is hopelessness in this culture that we're in right now. The throwing in of the towel and the lifting of the hands in surrender. People, we have to have the grit to keep believing God and keep getting up every day and going to the grind, as it were, to make the difference, because they believe that they could make a difference, and they did. We are the witnesses of that, and we have to believe that we can make a difference. If we give up, the next generation has no chance at all.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful. Thank you, sir. Dr. Gray?
Yeah, I would just add that what came to me, 'cause I was praying on the answer, is that faith is enduring,
Mm,
right? And so, through the faith and work of those who came before us, we have a template, all
mhm,
right, for survival and for continuing on this journey. All right. And so we know that our journey is not in it. The struggle is continuous. But,
mhm,
if we follow on that same path and highlight that faith in the narratives,
mhm,
because sometimes when we speak of things, we divorce the philosophy and the belief systems and the values and
mhm,
concentrate so much on what the action represented. When
mm,
we're talking about historical family, justice, and we have to make sure that the faith always has a place within that.
mm,
Um, I can't tell that story, the family story, without considering what faith brought them through.
Mm-hmm.
mm, mhm,
And I can't exist at this moment
mhm,
without recognizing that I have to have faith in God to bring me through.
mm,
So I think, we have to be able to sustain that over
mhm,
time and don't get discouraged.
mhm,
I'm, talking about, thinking about the ancestress who was pacing. That woman was born enslaved,
mhm, mhm,
and was able to praise God in anyhow, as they say, hallelujah, anyhow, and
mhm,
to raise 3 generations of her family.
mm. Yeah,
So, what better example do I need?
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. So, last questions, except something comes up. What do you both think are maybe number one, number two, number three, the major imperative, like for our generation now? Maybe it might be civil rights involved, or what you, especially for Chicago, for this generation, what should number one, number two, the main things? There was a time when it was against segregation. There was a time when it was, abolitionist and all that. What is the main thing now? Maybe one, two that we need
I,
to focus on.
I think really it is unity within the church,
Hmm.
oneness,
Yeah.
where we have to shake out the true believers, because there's many people who call themselves Christian
Mhm.
that don't like Jews, and Jesus was a Jew. And so
Mhm. Yeah.
they we have to really shake out true Christianity and true unity in the faith. That, I
Mhm.
think, that's the big issue right now, because our country, our world, as a matter of fact, our world is breaking apart along racial, economic, cultural lines. And
Mhm.
the church is a super culture. It overcomes, it's an epiculture. It overcomes that, and
Mhm.
it draws from every kindred and tongue
Mhm.
into one family. And if we lose that in the church, then the world has no hope at all. Then the salt has lost its savor.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm. So unity, unity, unity. Thank you, Dr. Gray.
Yeah, I was thinking more abstractly. Well, I started with something practical in my mind, and I'm thinking about knowledge and
Mm,
education and reading, but I would say to prioritize wisdom,
mm,
and our perception of what we see and read and hear. And I
mhm,
think, I'm thinking prioritizing wisdom and literacy. And that sounds general when I say literacy, but there are some knowledges that we need to hold on to,
mhm,
some that are yet to be discovered, and and with the unity and the wisdom together,
mhm.
we can't fail in God anyway. But I really believe that there has to be some kind of grasp of wisdom.
Wow, powerful. So power, I think three things, highlighted from this: power, unity, wisdom.
There you go.
Yeah. So those of you who are watching, they say the prayer, the fasting, and then, doing it not just, alone, but the body. We have to get the body just moving together.
Yeah.
And then talking about strategies. Wisdom is about strategies. Wisdom is actually not strategies for handling things and creating things. So now we can be very strategic, with the power, with the unity and all that. That is, those are the major imperative from these prophetic voices that we have heard today. So I would just like to ask any last final words that you both would like to share with the audience, because we're going to be rounding up the show now.
I just want to thank you, Pastor Land, for hosting something like this, to give opportunity for thoughts and ideas and wisdom to be dispersed like this. Thank you for your leadership. You are serving this city well.
Thank you, sir. Wow, that means a lot coming from you. I'm going to sleep well. I'm going to go tell my wife. I wish she's watching us.
Sleep with a smile on your face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Said I'm doing something for this city, baby.
I did want to thank you also for this opportunity to share and learn. And this was just fabulous. I did want to do a quick shout out to Bishop Peacher. I heard through the grapevine from my mom that she went to, tell you how small the village is, that my mom went to high school with your wife. Is her name Katie?
Katie, yeah. You went to
Dunbar.
Yes, my mom graduated from Dunbar in 68.
Yeah, that's where she graduated.
Yeah. It's a small world.
Wow.
So that's that South Side village. So
outside.
So
wow.
So the world is small.
In touch anyhow? Are they still in touch?
I don't know. I don't know any details. But yeah,
I know she's watching. I know.
Yeah,
your
my mom is watching. Yeah, she. I called her to verify. My sister told me. I called her to verify, and she said yes. She went to Dunbar with Katie Peacher, but she couldn't remember her maiden name. It was what?
Jackson.
Okay.
Awesome. Wow, it's a small world. It's really a small world. And so glad even this is my father-in-law, actually. I said word of wisdom.
Oh,
that's watching. So it's a transgenerational conversation. Yeah. Awesome. Wow. I really, really appreciate your time and the time that we have had today, the wisdom that you have shared. I wish we could just continue, but we can continue by bringing you back some other time, if
I would love it.
Okay, thank you so much. But it's been a powerful time. Audience, please, can we appreciate Bishop? I want to see putting it in there. Bishop and Dr. Gray, let's just appreciate them. I want to show some.
Maya, this is my sister.
Before we round up, I would like to show some of the comments. So please, just appreciate them. Put in something that you have learned today, something that has been imparted to you today, some wisdom. I am going to sit down with my elderlies and I am going to ask the story. And the good thing is that I'm so excited.
Right. Get the story.
Yeah, from my wife's side, my father-in-law, I just remember now, and his dad also, they have a biography that they wrote, like he's writing his own.
Okay.
Now. So that's I always tell my kids, that's great history for you. These are precious things. Well, my dad has passed away, and he passed away about in 2013, right?
Oh.
So that's about 8 years ago or so. And one of the things that pained me after he died was that I did not have anything that he had written. Nothing written. I was so shocked. He was an intellect, he had all that, but writing stuff down. So I made up my mind that I'm going to write my story while I am still alive so that my kids can read it in my own words.
Yes.
So I plan to keep a journal, you know,
Yes.
of things that go on. I put pictures, and that's why I take pictures a lot. I put it and I write, this is what happened today, this is what happened yesterday, these are the things I was praying for, this is when God answered it, these are some, so I'm writing it, and then I also write my public journal on Facebook. People who watch my Facebook or whatever, I put pictures there. It's like I said, I'm going to write a story that people can read, and they will read it from my perspective, not from a second-hand perspective. So yeah, I just, you know, wanted to say that what you did just today just encouraged me, you know, to do more of that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So everyone watching, this is the Spicy Night for February. We will see you again in the month of March, the first Wednesday of the month of March, for another Spicy Night. God bless you. Bye-bye from Bishop.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we're going to go offline now. Bye, everyone.